There are some incredible scenes broadcast from Iran this weekend, from state TV and some invited Western media for the ongoing funeral and the lying in state of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, assassinated on the first day of the war with the US on the 28th of February. Huge crowds in the courtyard here, as you can see, the Tehran Imam Khomeini Grand Mosalla religious complex. Hundreds of thousands have been on the streets of the capital, clad in black, many of them for official mourning. We're expecting up to 20 million in the course of 6 days. Prayers, tears, crowds shouting revenge in front of cameras. A week of reverence, respects paid, and a week many analysts talk of the power projection on show, the resilience of the regime, first against the protests, then against the war with America. And still no sign of the new Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's son Mujtaba. Notably, 3 of his brothers were there, as well as relatives of Ayatollah's family who were killed on that day. His wife, the eldest daughter, son and daughter-in-law, and their 3-year-old granddaughter. Here's Shirley Sidbom.
3 of the late Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei's sons attended prayers for their father on the second day of funeral ceremonies in Tehran, but not Mujtaba Khamenei. Iran's current Supreme Leader has not appeared in public since he was selected to replace his father. Among those who did appear in the show of public devotion, representatives of Hezbollah and Hamas, 2 armed groups seen as Iran's proxies. The head of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Ahmad Vahidi, was also seen in the crowd, as were Iran's president and its parliament speaker, who has played a central role in peace talks with the United States.
I ask the officials to do whatever it takes. Their negotiation must include revenge for our leader.
Our foreign policy should not be shaped in a way that allows our martyred leader's blood to be dishonored, and for other countries to be able to do such things without any serious response from our government and diplomatic system.
On Sunday, again, huge crowds turned out to honor the dead. The images played on state television, a message to audiences at home and abroad that the regime is still standing and still commands significant support. Meanwhile, dissenting voices were nowhere in sight, including those behind the protests crushed in January. The massive procession will extend to Iraq, where religious ceremonies will be held in Shiite holy shrine cities Najaf and Karbala. The late leader will be buried in Iran next Thursday in his home city of Mashhad.
Well, these are the live scenes ongoing in Tehran right now by the Grand Mosalla complex within the courtyard. As you can see, many people clad in black, waving Iranian flags. Let's bring in Negar Mortazavi, an American-Iranian journalist, senior fellow at the US-based think tank at the Center of International Policy and the host of the Iran podcast. Great to speak to you on the programme, Negar. When you're watching this footage of the Grand Mosalla, the funeral events, tell me what you're picking up in terms of the political dynamics at play.
Thanks for having me. So this is a very significant political and religious event at the same time, with multiple messages, domestic, regional, and international, as also it was highlighted in your reporter's package. It's significant because it comes after 2 wars from the US and Israel, and essentially the second war. This war opened by the assassination of the supreme leader, the top leader in the country. So it's meant to send a message of defiance to Iran's enemies, the US and Israel, who attacked Iran. The leader is portrayed as essentially a victim, a martyr, which adds a very significant religious and historic layer to this. It's also a show of strength by the system, by the government, because this war, one of the stated goals of the war was regime change, which didn't happen. And so the message is that not only did the regime not change, leadership changed, but that there's still continuity, there was succession. His son is now the supreme leader, the successor. And it's also a message to not just their domestic base, that they're still standing strong, but also to their regional allies. And then also internationally, we see heads of states, foreign delegations attending. Yes. It's a very important state ceremony with multiple messages.
And within that complex, with no sign of Mujtaba Khamenei, who do you think is the most powerful figure in Tehran at that complex right now?
Well, first of all, there are multiple reasons, stated and non-stated, for the absence. We know the new supreme leader, his son, Ayatollah Khamenei, is potentially another target for assassination by Israel. He was also injured in the attack that killed his father and also members of his family. It also adds another dimension, the fact that it wasn't just the leader, but also members of his family, including a child. All of that adds to the symbolism. But right now, we see essentially all senior figures of the Islamic Republic minus the supreme leader. So that in itself is a show of unity within the system. We can't point to one single person as, essentially the most powerful, but I would say the most visible public figure right now is probably the Speaker of Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, who's really been rising to the occasion, is serving as a top negotiator with an international profile now and serving alongside the president, if not even more important than him.
To that point, it's very interesting. There's a lot of being made of the power politics on display, kind of the open displays of emotion, particularly of Mr. Ghalibaf, who just spoke of the Parliament Speaker. Also, we know the chief negotiator, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf. Let me show you this, if you haven't seen it already. This footage of him and the foreign minister paying respects together. This is Abbas Araghchi. It's gone viral. The foreign minister seen by some as giving the side eye. Let's take a look. So much being made of this. Does a picture tell 1,000 words? What's going on there?
I think maybe users are reading a little too much into this. I've known both personalities. It's a difference in the personality, but also the public projection of how they are perceived and seen in this event. The foreign minister, of course, is a lower rank official. He's the one who is doing the diplomatic route for the negotiations, essentially as number two, and the Speaker of Parliament is the number one. And he's trying to have this very public image as the new sort of position that he's risen to. And I think this corresponds with that, a very public and visible show of grief in the front line of this ceremony of the funeral, as opposed to the foreign minister, who also personality-wise, he's a more reserved and sort of more quiet diplomat, essentially Iran's top diplomat. So I think there's also the contrast in really the position, the diplomat versus the very public figure who came out of an election. He's Speaker of the Parliament. He had aspirations to be the president. He's run for president many times, potentially may run again. There's also that prediction that this is the path that may lead to him having that high office. So I think there's a political message. There's also some personality. And of course, there's always social media.
And said to be very close to Mujtaba Khamenei, Mr. Ghalibaf, as well. Do you think the Revolutionary Guard behind Mujtaba Khamenei right now are desperate for him to be seen in public? And I quote the late Queen of England, one has to be seen to be believed.
I think, it's a double-edged sword. Yes, of course, he's the new leader. And of course, appearing in public is part of leadership. This is, a limitation. It's certainly not a virtue. But at the same time, we know he's injured. We don't know how badly. So that could impact the image, the first image of a leader, if he's badly injured, if it's visibly injured. And also the fact that he's a target. So is it worth appearing in public and then getting assassinated and then having to choose another successor within less than a year? So I think the risks are probably perceived as higher by the entirety of the system. We know that they're still operating under wartime mentality. Leadership meetings are not being conducted as usual. Messaging between the leaders is not normal. Serious rounds of assassination. It wasn't just the supreme leader, top tier echelon military leaders, after years of assassination of nuclear scientists, even diplomats. A former foreign minister was assassinated by Israel, Ali Larijani. These are non-military figures who have been assassinated by Israel, and we know that others are on the list. So I think the fear is real. It's not just paranoia, and also the symbolism of having someone appear in public and then immediately being assassinated, or also, the physical injury. I think these are all what is being waged.
Yeah.
Certainly not appearing in public is a limitation, of
Is it a
course.
coincidence, Negar, that the timing of this funeral, the same period of America 250 celebrations, the President Trump is focusing on his domestic events, risk analysis lower?
I don't think it's a coincidence. I mean, at least it was in the back of the mind of whoever was planning. First of all, this is a departure from religious tradition, Islamic Shia tradition, because you do the funeral as soon as possible, essentially. You bury your dead as soon as possible. And this took months to plan. So it was a departure, it was during wartime. Again, many limitations, security limitations, and then also the planning took a while. But then they are doing it in the month of Muharram, which is a month of mourning for the Shias. I think that's the most important symbolism, both religious, but also Muharram has this political message of, defiance, victimhood in Iranian historic and religious traditional psyche. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this is also at the same time when Donald Trump is trying to celebrate America here.
Should we talk about the state of talks as you understand them at the moment, and the diplomacy? Because both sides headed to Doha this week for meetings with Pakistani and Qatari mediators, but not face-to-face. So this was lower level, we believe. We are, 17 days into this 60-day window of negotiations. Where do you think things stand?
I think diplomacy is moving forward, but slowly. What is important, sort of the sticking points, is that from Iran's viewpoint, the memorandum of understanding is not really standing. And what they have essentially signaled is a sequence of events. So they want the memorandum to be applied, and then they want to have these other negotiations on other issues. So I think the process is moving slow. There's still a conflict ongoing in Lebanon that's seen as a violation of the memorandum by the Iranians. The Strait of Hormuz is still not the way it was agreed to be. Iranians are saying they would allow passage through Hormuz, but with coordination from them. There's been some discrepancy. But at the same time, this is expected. This is a stage essentially between a ceasefire and a final peace deal. And it is messy. It was bound to be messy. There are disagreements. And the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding between the two sides, is really a raw document with many complicated points and no details. So the details are to be hashed out in these negotiations that are happening.
14 points, very vague, more holes than Swiss cheese, say many analysts. Let me get your take as well, Negar. It's estimated that 20% of the nation of 90 million support the regime. This is according to Gaman, the group for analysing and measuring attitudes in Iran. It's a Netherlands-based research group. So there is this simmering, suppressed anger right now when it comes to those who protested in the streets of January, those protests starting, as you know, on the dire state of the economy. There was a water crisis too. Remember, there's talk of the possibility of the whole of Tehran needing to evacuate at some point. Do you have a sense of the effect on the war right now to everyday life of Iranians, the cost of living amongst this?
Well, first of all, I just want to point out that there are multiple polls. So I've seen support anywhere between 20, 30. I've seen polls up to 40, nearly 50% support. So that's the caveat. But nevertheless, there's very serious opposition. There's radical opposition to the point of regime change, even support for the war. And there's also sort of a great area of the population in the middle who don't necessarily support foreign intervention or are not as radical as regime change, but they want fundamental changes with political, economic, social, like you said, even environmental grievances. And there's a lot for the state to answer, to respond, to address. They haven't. That's why we see protest after protest, mass protest after protest. But I think what this war gave the Islamic Republic is more confidence, newfound confidence, because one of the messages, one of the goals by the US and especially by Israel was that once they attack the country from the outside, people are going to rise up. These protests are going to turn into regime change protests, and they're going to essentially topple the Islamic Republic. And that didn't happen. It didn't happen last year. It didn't happen this year. So and in fact, the war led to a rise of nationalism inside the country, not necessarily rally around the flag for everyone, but nationalism, this idea that, okay, this is our homeland, this is our sovereignty, no matter who rules it, we don't want foreign intervention, and we don't want bombs falling on our children's schools and hospitals and universities and civilian infrastructure. So I think coming out of this war, the Islamic Republic has some confidence in more support from the population, but at the same time, it's a double-edged sword. They have to respond and address a lot of grievances, the top one being economic, but also political, social, environmental. So they have a lot of challenges ahead. I don't know if they're going to be able to deal with them. If not, we're
Yes.
going to see more dissent rising up again.
Look, I mean, let's be clear. We've had countless people on this program for the last few months, really in despair. Iranians who really wanted to see the end of a regime, or an end to the suppression, and they haven't seen it. And I just wanted to, just your brief sense when we hear of President Trump claiming that this regime is a new regime. Do you actually think the reality is this is more entrenched? That it's even more the grip of Iran is under the ICRG, the Revolutionary Guard?
Well, I think what the war did essentially, it led to the hardliners becoming more strong, consolidating power. Essentially, the opposite of what it was claiming. Help for the Iranians was no help. The war opened with an attack on an elementary school full of children. There's been lots of civilian infrastructure and death in the country. So the war was by no means a help to the Iranian people or to the protesters. In fact, I would argue it's made things worse. It's closed the space for political dissent. It's created a more securitized space. But nevertheless, I think, yes, this is a new chapter for the Islamic Republic. Literally, because of the assassinations, you have new leadership who are rising from the second rank of the same system. So it's not a new system, but it's a new chapter for the system. It has the opportunity to potentially make some changes. It looks like they want to, at least in the economic sense. That's one of the results they want from the negotiations, some economic opening, but we have to see what comes after the war that can potentially be more long-term closing of the political space and less room for dissent.
Negar, good to talk to you. Negar Mortazavi, Iranian-American journalist, senior fellow at the US-based think tank, the Center for International Policy, and as I said, the host of the Iran podcast.